So today we're here with Mr. Dennis V. Brown, the ICAJ's 2023 Distinguished Member Awardee. So we'll start with the very first question. Mr. Brown, tell us a little bit about your early years. Where in Jamaica are you from?
Actually, I'm from parish of Portland, the best parish in Jamaica, as one would say. And I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley of Portland, and then attended school in Port Antonio. I attended Portland High School, and after graduating from Portland High School, my next option was to get a job in Port Antonio. I didn't particularly want to become a teacher at the time, and that was probably the job that was most available in Port Antonio. So I decided that I would then choose to migrate to Kingston, and that's here I am.
All right. So when you migrated to Kingston, did you come as an accountant? Did you always want to be an accountant?
Actually, in school, my initial inkling as a professional was to be a journalist. And my sister at the time, my elder sister, said to me that she didn't believe that was a great profession because there weren't a lot of opportunities then. So I decided that my next goal would have been to become a dentist. And after getting to Kingston, I joined Jamaica Mutual. So I came to Kingston and got a job at Jamaica Mutual Assurance Society. At the time, I was, I think, very good at maths when I saw it in school. And there was an opportunity there. There's a lot of backlog work that needed to be done, and I was employed then to assist with the backlog work. I worked there for 1 year, and I think I did very well, but I wanted to move on. And so I decided that I would go to West Indies College to advance my career. And at West Indies College, I did business administration and graduated with a diploma from West Indies College. Living in Kingston, I then decided to join Estate Industries and as a payroll clerk, and thereafter an accounting clerk. Quite interesting because I recall as a payroll clerk, I was a bit uneasy of having to go to the bank on Friday mornings and to draw this large amount of cash. And I recall saying it to my supervisor about it, that I was very intimidated having to do that. And I recall him saying to me that I wasn't to worry because they do have an insurance policy that covered me. I was not too excited by that comfort, nonetheless. So I spent 2 years working with that company, and then thereafter I joined National Trading Company as an accountant. Worked for a while there, and I somehow believed that I needed to advance my learning, and I had the opportunity of working and seeing a number of persons who were in the accounting profession, and somehow I thought that it was a way to go to advance my career. So I decided that I would join the profession. My first job was with a firm that eventually became Ernst & Young. But before that, it was a local firm called Daly Campbell Smith and Company. I worked there for 4 months. I didn't like the setup there, and so I decided that I would try and get a job in an international firm, accounting firm. I applied for a job at Coopers and Lybrand, and I got a job there. So I worked with that initial firm for 4 months, joined Coopers and Lybrand, and at Coopers and Lybrand, I thought that was where I wanted to go. During my period at Coopers and Lybrand, I started out as a staff accountant, And of course, it represented a significant drop in income for me, having been an accountant at a firm before. And so I was ably assisted by my wife financially at the time. And I know it was a bit challenging for us. We now started to have kids, small kids, and financially it was a bit challenging. But I decided that it was an investment for my future. So I stayed, and then during the time, being at an international firm, you're required to study. And so I enrolled at ACCA, carried my studies through there, and got qualified. As a matter of fact, interestingly, is that towards the final stage, not many people were being qualified on an annual basis. I think probably we would have had 2 or 3 persons qualified in any 1 year. So after level 4, I think I reached level 4. We had 5 levels. And level 4, I somehow believed that I wasn't going to pass my exam when I did it. And so I decided that I would enroll in a college in the UK. I enrolled, paid the fee, initial amount, bought my tickets and everything, because I somehow did not believe that I had done enough to have passed the exam. So I wasn't too careful, and I actually saw the envelope when I got home one day. I looked at the envelope and I opened it. And of course, in my mind, I'm just going to be seeing fail. To my surprise, I didn't see a fail. So all of them passed. And that made a difference. So I didn't have to go to the UK. I then sought from the college in the UK a refund of the amount, and they actually gave it to me, which was surprisingly. I wasn't able to get back my ticket fare. That was it, but I was happy I didn't have to go. So I got a savings from there. And I think that was having qualified. I got some offers, because being qualified at that stage, a number of firms would be now making offers to you. So I remember I got a good offer from one. Well, I thought it was a good offer. And the person offered me as well that over time I could become a partner. There's a small firm, and I recall speaking with one of the co-workers then, and he said to me that if it is that firm, that is a normal, that is how they speak. They always make you an offer, and when you get there, the offer never comes. And he said to me that, look, you're working with an international firm, you have the opportunity for advanced learning, you have the opportunity for travel, to go to courses, etc. You won't have that at the smaller firm. And that, in fact, really was a mind changer for me. And so I didn't leave I stayed on. Not long after that, I was then appointed to be a manager at the firm. Became a manager for, I think it might have been about 3 years. And then I was offered partnership with the firm. And that was in 1983.
Sounds great. So quite a journey. And with everything from starting off not in accounting to then being offered to a partner, throughout your career as an accountant, what are some of the most important lessons you have learned? Or if there's one that stands out for you?
Yes. As a partner, I had to deal with partners on an ongoing basis. And it is almost like they become almost as a family. And we had to learn, persons have different idiosyncrasies, different attitudes, etc. And we had to learn to live with individuals. I think in terms of relationship building, that is something that I gained over time. I understand how to deal with people, and as best as possible, I think one could say that I would probably work with and live with most persons.
Great. And so with all of this as well, what do you consider to be your most significant professional achievement?
There are a number of them, and I'll probably tell you a few that maybe have stood out most in my mind. In 2000, shortly after joining council, I was then invited to become chairman of the Accounting Standards Committee. We started to look at what our role was as members of the committee, as a committee. The primary purpose of the committee at the time, our objective of the committee, was to issue accounting standards and to monitor compliance with those standards. Just around that time, there were significant developments occurring in the marketplace, internationally, should I say, in the ecosystem. And one of the challenges we recognized then was that we could not, with our limited resources, be able to issue standards or to continue to issue standards in the manner in which they were done. At the time, Jamaica had what we call Jamaica SAP. And the SAP actually represented a composition or an adoption of parts of international accounting standards, locally developed SAPs, and as well as hybrid from other, extract from other accounting standards elsewhere. We didn't find it as being sustainable. And I recall having a discussion with Mrs. Pat Hale, who was president at the Institute at the time, tell her that we were having challenges, and as we see going forward. My committee, in fact, had asked me to speak with the president and to let her know, because we then agreed that we believed that the way forward was to adopt international accounting standards. They were not the greatest standard before, and by then, the International Accounting Standards Committee now started to issue standards and had significantly upgraded these standards. And also, following on that was IOSCO started now to endorse those standards. And they were really high quality standards. And we thought that that would have been the way to go. So I had a discussion with Mrs. Hale about it, and she said to me that I'm to make a presentation to council. My initial presentation to council, I somehow didn't believe that it was overwhelming in terms of a positive response. And I mentioned it to my committee thereafter, and I told them that I think that I should actually ask the president if I could make another presentation. And I did the second time, and the response was quite strong as a positive. And so the choice now was that we move towards international accounting standards. And in 2000, the ICAJ decided now and announced its intention to adopt international accounting standards and charged the committee with it to drive the conversion. It was quite challenging. A number of interest groups, etc., were not overwhelmingly supportive of it at the time. And we knew it was our job to try to develop a strategy and how do we communicate the need and what our mission was and how do we plan to achieve that. And so the committee decided now to develop a strategy or a strategic plan, and also to look at a rollout plan. Included in that was a major component which we consider to be the country action plan. And that plan indicated what were some of the key areas that we needed to focus on. One was public education. We needed to identify the structures, supporting structures, enablers, legislation, which would include legislation, regulatory bodies, etc. how do we also bring in the profession, because we had to get the accounting profession in support of that. And so these were some of the things that we had to consider. And the rollout of that, how are we going to do it? And importantly, how was that going to be financed? What institution did we have the institutional capacity to support that major trust? So these are some of the things that we had to consider. And so we designed a strategy and we came up with a plan and how we were going to roll it out and so on. Finance was an important consideration. And we discussed that with the Institute, and just around that time, we also had an opportunity to meet with IDB as an institute and to ask IDB for assistance. And IDB decided that they would give us a grant at the time. It was $1 million to support that, right? And that was a major element of it because we were now able to build institutional capacity within the institute to support this. What that included, also, we were now able to because the IFRS rollout, etc. Recall now we had Jamaica SAP that everybody was using. We now had to move away from that and to bring in a new, the IFRS handbook and how for training and development, etc. The funding assisted us significantly because we were now able to hold conferences or to host conferences at reduced price, being subsidized by the report. Secondly, we were able also to acquire handbooks at reduced price. And here's an important element now. When we decided now, because these are some challenges that the profession had as a whole, and how do we convince the persons, and so, because the smaller firms, the larger firms, of course, they could afford to buy handbooks for their staff. The smaller firms had a challenge, and recall now that each person would now need to have a handbook because you're going out to client to work and to understand, to study what the standards were and to be able to apply them. So at the time, we made contact with the ISB, International Accounting Standards Board, and in particular with the Commerce Department, who offered us at the time, through negotiation, to give us a significant discount on handbooks. And so it was now cheaper, a lot less costly, if you were to buy a handbook from the Institute as against buying it commercially outside. And I think that was not long after that, after we started the rollout, which included some of what in building capacity as well and training, the Institute had allowed us a 2-year gap for what we call planning and public education and awareness. So that's from 2000 to 2002. And then in 2002 now was the launch of the actual implementation of the standards. Having done that, we now had to consider what about auditing of those standards, of the financial statements. And so the Institute then, just as we launched IFRS, the Institute also launched adoption of ISA, which is International Standards on Auditing, to go with it. So essentially what it was that all financial statements must be prepared using IFRS, and secondly must be the audit of those financial statements must be done on the basis of International Standards on Auditing. Yeah.
Quite a major accomplishment.
It was a major accomplishment. Probably we had not appreciated the impact of that until IFAC, International Federation of Accountants, called us to ask us if they could tell us, if we could explain to them what is the strategy that we use, and if we could send them a copy of it. And we did that. Having seen it, then IPAC then called us and asked us for permission if they could adopt or use that strategy as part of their toolbox to guide other countries moving towards IFRS. And so our strategy was actually being used as a toolbox reference for countries across the world. Yes, and the follow-up to that was United Nations on Trade and Development heard about this or rollout of this, and so called us and invited us to make a presentation at their plenary session in Geneva on our implementation strategy and the journey that we followed to get to where we are in it. And I had the privilege of having address the United Nations Trade and Development Commission plenary session to explain to them about how we accomplished it and what we did and what were some of the learning points that we got from it and the way forward. And it was quite helpful because we did get quite a number of questions from the audience asking us questions about how we eventually managed to do.
So literally a case of from Jamaica to the world.
Yes.
All right. So, looking at all of your experience and all that you would have achieved throughout your career, for persons who are aspiring accountants or they're brand new in the profession or they're just getting their feet wet, do you have any advice that you'd want to give to those persons?
Firstly, I would say that the accounting profession, I think, is a very significant and important profession or discipline that really advance the economic development for nation. Governments depend on the profession as a whole for capacity building and also for nation building. If you were to think of it, what would the nation be without accountants? Okay. So it is a profession that I see, but it's an august profession, one that I think I would encourage persons to aspire to this as possible. The advice that I would say is that it should not be seen as a profession for just making money. There should be something that it should be in terms of it should be value creating and adding to nation building. We've had challenges in Jamaica, economic challenges, and on many occasions, the profession was called upon to assist and to guide in terms of the way forward. How do we get out of this? The second thing also that I would see it is that the level of discipline that comes with it. There are certain key factors that you need to understand. Integrity, confidentiality, those are important ingredients in terms of the profession. And I would say that it is part of, it's actually in terms of building the better person as a profession.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So just switching gears a little bit. So I wanted to talk about Mr. Brown on a more personal note. So when you're not busy accomplishing all these things in the accountancy profession, serving ICAJ in all the ways you have, what are you usually doing for fun?
Okay. It's a difficult question. Because I really I'm not a specialist in any particular field. I like a number of things. For example, I like football. I like cricket, and especially cricket in the older days. But generally, and I am a person who believes, I'm God-fearing, and I'm a person who believes that I have been blessed. I have gotten a lot, not because I was deserving of it, but I was just blessed in terms of what I've received. And I take it as a mantra that having received so much, that I should also give back as much as I can. And so I've spent quite a bit of time, I've invested a bit of time in my church, in terms of church work, church support, etc. I've also spent a lot of time also in terms of with charity involvement, charity endeavors, and so forth. In community, in terms of my community association, I try and get involved in it, etc. And it's just to give back and something, because I've received so much. I've been blessed to that extent that I think that it behoves me to give back.
So what is one interesting or funny thing about you that most people probably do not know?
That's an interesting question. It's a difficult question. Well, it's quite funny. It's quite funny, yes, because, and this was quite funny. In school, everybody knew me as Dennis V. Brown, but nobody knew what the V stood for. And so they'd ask me all it, and I said, no, you don't need to know that. If you're Dennis Brown, that's fine. You don't have to. So. And somehow one of my friends decided, said, well, you won't say what it is. I'm going to call you Vernon. And to this day, sometimes a person from school would call me, and they said Vernon. And immediately once I hear that Vernon, I know that it must have been a schoolmate.
All right, so talk to us about what's next for you. You've had quite a remarkable and admirable sort of career. What other plans do you have for yourself now going forward?
Okay. One of the things that I had in the initial proposal was to encourage the Institute to establish an institute or an institution of directors. And at the time, I had great ideas as to what it is, because I believe that somehow it would have strengthened strengthened capacity building generally in the profession and so on. But it hadn't materialized. I still have that dream that it should be, etc. In subsequent to retiring, UNCTAD had asked me, along with Dr. Kravaski from Trinidad, to carry out a study on corporate governance disclosures in Jamaica and to compare that with what obtains in emerging markets. And we both did that study and presented it to, we actually did it and presented at a plenary session at UNCTAD in Geneva as well. Subsequent to that, Dr. Travasky had founded a company in Trinidad called Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute, CCGI, right? And had asked me to be a director of that company. And I was a director for a while, and then after that I rotated off. And I think he himself has rotated off the company as well, but the company still survived. And the key thing, or key objective of that company was to promote corporate governance awareness throughout the Caribbean and elsewhere. But our focus was largely on the Caribbean. I still believe that I would like to be involved as much as possible in terms of promoting corporate governance. I'm not so sure how I'd want to do it, but there is that dream and there's that idea that I still believe that there's need for stronger corporate governance and also corporate governance disclosures, especially in financial statements, and to see how best that can become as a culture within organization.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And we're winding down, so I wanted to ask, Having now been recognized or been selected for this prestigious award, any final words in relation to your 2023 recognition as the ICAJ's Distinguished Awardee?
I would say that I cannot accept it without actually particularly speaking to some of the persons who really have supported the achievement of this. And that is an ex-partner of mine, Alok Jan. He was so supportive. A number of challenges, a number of issues, and I would always be able to go to him on a call and they'd say, or let's go to his office, or we talk about it. And he would provide me the support and the assistance. There are a number of other persons as well. But I would also want to say that I have to also acknowledge and thank my wife for the assistance and the support that she has provided over time. Sometimes at night I will be up working and so forth, and she has to be there by herself. So I want to say thank on that. And in terms of going forward, I would say that I think the Institute is on a great track now to moving forward and to advance in the profession as a whole. And I believe that I feel encouraged when I see the younger generation now taking leadership and taking control of the situation and the management. I feel elated with it, and I said, I think we're on to something good. Yes.